Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be going over the best items for Rogue in Phase 3, the ones you should focus on, some of the items that maybe you should just pass over and give to other classes, and just give you an understanding of which items are the big heavy hitters and which items are the stinkers, right? So with that said, let's get right into the gear for Black Temple and Mount Hyjal, covering the new items coming in Phase 3. So the first thing is to talk about Glaives. Glaives are really good. I think everyone knows it, but I guess maybe to try and give you an idea of kind of how to quantify how good they are. If you are able to get both Glaives, as a rogue, it is going to be, pretty similar damage increase to every other item from Tier 6 combined. So, if you were to compare the damage of a rogue with just Glaives and the damage of a rogue with all of the gear, minus the Glaives, they would be pretty neck and neck. So that kind of gives you an idea of roughly how good Glaives are. They are insanely good. Besides that, right, obviously that demon effect is really good, but that's not the main part of what makes Glaives really good. Obviously, kind of crazy when you're setting aside a 200 attack power damage increase against demons, a common enemy, but that's really not what makes Glaives insane. What makes them so powerful is the main hand being so incredibly slow, the offhand being so incredibly fast, both very important characteristics for Rogue. Both items having, good stats and high agility, offensive stats, and that 2-set bonus that gives you that haste. Haste is insane for Rogue. So all those things combined with just really high DPS make these perfect Rogue weapons. So very good. And obviously everyone knows how good they are, but wanted to maybe put into perspective just how good they are for Rogue. So obviously if you can get Glaives, try and get them. But we all know that not only can it be tricky to get them within a guild because multiple people might want them, but they also have to drop, and you might not see them drop. But just keep in mind that the offhand is individually best in slot. The main hand is individually best in slot. Glaives are incredibly powerful together. They're best in slot the entire game for Rogue. And yeah, really great item. Now, once we move away from Glaives, we still got some pretty great items and some pretty exciting stuff. But obviously Glaives kind of blow everything out of the water. So they're in a tier of their own. But here we have the big upgrades. And we have, first up, we have Cursed Vision of Sargeras. Now, on paper, this is the one of the biggest upgrades that you can get outside of Glaives. Technically, it is the biggest upgrade besides the offhand. And the offhand, is an item that not only would you eventually hope to replace with the Glaive, but is an item that doesn't have as much competition. Meanwhile, the helmet is best in slot for every physical damage dealer except for a feral, because they still use the Wolf's Head helm. So every physical damage dealer wants this helmet. A lot of competition, and so definitely an item that is going to be tricky to get, but if you can get it, it looks really cool. It covers your eyes, it's this little bandana, and it is extremely powerful, a huge increase to damage. So definitely something to keep your eyes on. The only caveat with the Cursed Vision of Sargeras is that potentially you might get this item and it might cause your tier 5 4-set to break. You would still be upgrading your character by using this helmet. That's how powerful it is. But, the upgrade is smaller if it's like the first item you get and it immediately breaks your 4-set. But that's really I wouldn't worry too much about it, because at the end of the day, it's a really powerful item, significantly better than the tier helm. And it is going to be a massive upgrade over tier 5 helm when you do get it. So really great item. Next, we've got the ring. So both the ring and the neck are both pretty tough decisions on which one you would want to go for more. They're both really big increases to damage. The ring is a little bigger of an increase when it comes to the damage, but the necklace is going to be an item that has a little bit more competition. You might see some classes shying away from the ring if they have too much hit, whereas pretty much every class can go for the neck. But you might see a few classes end up going with the Choker of Serrated Blades, even though most of them, their BIS setup is going to be the Choker of Endless Nightmares. Rogues don't really have that flexibility because hit is just too good and they use too much of it. They pretty much, they just want both. There's not really a BIS setup that you can make without either. So both are going to have high competition. Both are going to be something a lot of classes want. Both are big upgrades for Rogue. Next, we've got the wrists. Now, wrists are a huge upgrade for Rogue, but fortunately, they are a little bit less competition than some of these other items. So not something that I would necessarily prioritize more than these items, simply because it's mainly hunters that are going to want this item besides rogues, whereas the other classes that would be interested in a wrist like this are going to be gravitating a little more towards deadly cuffs. So definitely still a really big upgrade. Actually, a bigger damage increase than both of the pieces of jewelry. It's just that the jewelry items are going to have more competition and are likely going to be more important to prioritize. That's why I put them a little higher in the tier. Next, we have the big upgrades that have a little bit less competition. So the sword is actually an insane upgrade, and it is incredibly powerful. I'm sure all of you rogues know that you haven't had an offhand from raid the entire game, right? The entirety of Burning Crusade, there has not been an offhand sword that drops from raid. You have been using Latros from a dungeon, and some of you might have upgraded it with a PvP sword, whether that be Gladiator or Merciless. Regardless of which you have, even if you have the Season 2 offhand, this is still an insane upgrade. It is, incredible stats, very fast speed, high DPS. All you could ever ask for in an offhand. Except for that. But anyway, besides that, all you could ever ask for an offhand, and a really, really good item. So definitely the biggest item besides Glaives in terms of an upgrade for a rogue. The reason I don't have it in this top tier is because the only class that realistically should want this is a protection warrior that is human. And I think in the overwhelming majority of guilds, even if you're a rogue that is supposed to get Glaives, I think a lot of guilds realize that there's a decent chance they don't drop, they have low drop rate, and this is not really an item that is as useful for a class like, for example, a warrior, because it's too fast for Whirlwind, even though it still could be good, and it's also not necessarily something that's ideal for a hunter either. So with that said, the Blade of Savagery is something that should be going to rogue anyway, and at the maybe one human warrior before a rogue if they're protection. But yeah, really an item that should be for rogue, and that's why it's not on the highest tier. You shouldn't have to fight for this one too much, but is your biggest upgrade outside of Glaives. Next, we have Slayer items. So not only are some of these Slayer items insanely powerful individually, but if you can get that 2-set going, you are going to be gaining a huge spike of damage. The 4-set is a little extra damage, but the 2-set is quite good. And combined with the fact that multiple of these Slayer pieces are just really, really good, you're going to be really happy to get 2 pieces. And if you're worried about when you should break your tier 5 set, you can break it as soon as you get 2 pieces of Slayer, or 1 piece of Slayer and 1 powerful offset piece. So that is when you are generally going to break your tier 5. You pretty much just need two nice pieces. Legs do not qualify as a good enough individual piece, but if you are able to get the 2-set with the legs, that is good enough reason to break tier 5. But next, we're going to kind of go to our medium, kind of our smaller upgrades. Keep in mind these are both all really good items and best in slot. They're just not on the kind of the increase. They're not a big increase as some of these big items up here, right? So you've got the Cloak. The Cloak is going to be your upgrade from Drape of the Dark Reavers. Nice, solid upgrade. Not a lot to say there. The classes that need hit on their Cloak are all going to want this. Depending on the exact list that all of your physical damage dealers are using, they might want this. But this is going to be a little bit less competition than some of the other items, because classes like Hunter, Ret, these are classes that can end up running into too much hit. Even something like a Feral Cat can opt for like the Kael'thas Cloak instead. So keep in mind that you might not have too much trouble getting this item. But yeah, definitely not a bad upgrade at all. Next, you have Boots. Now, these are boots that you're going to see a lot of classes having some interest in. Hunters and rogues, these are best in slot for. Enhancement shamans, they're best in slot as well, although they do have options to use different boots that are almost as good, that are male. And then you also have warriors and rets. Now, warriors really shouldn't use this pair of boots unless they're like an arms warrior that just has like way too much hit, but they really shouldn't be using these. They have a nice pair of plate boots, but you might see something like a ret having interest in these as well if they have too much hit. So keep in mind, all that's to say, these items, this item is going to have a decent amount of competition. And it's not a crazy upgrade, but it's a nice upgrade over Edgewalkers. A nice little stamina bump as well. Next, we have the Slayer's Legs. Again, pretty small upgrade. Not something you want to use if it breaks your tier 5 4 set. But definitely very powerful if it gets you to your 2 set. And eventually is going to be a best in slot item for you. Individually and with the set, best in slot, right? So even if you are not getting the Cursed Vision and you're using 5 pieces of tier, the legs are still bis, even if you remove set bonuses. Just not a big upgrade over something like Skulker's Greaves from all the way in Kara. All right, next we have the big upgrades that are not best in slot. Now I want to give a little caveat here. If you are not able to get the Cursed Vision of Sargeras very quickly, the tier helm is definitely worth getting and a big upgrade. It's just technically not best in slot, so it's not listed as a premium item. But yeah, definitely go for this item if you can't get the helmet, because it's still a big upgrade and yeah, quite good. These other items are not best in slot, but big power spikes. So if nobody needs them, you can use them. But in most cases, you really should be passing these items to other classes that they're bis for. These wrists are bis for several classes. This chest is bis for several classes as well. So go ahead and pass that over to them. And if you do get something like another Shadow Tunic, this is something I could see nobody else wanting. You could slot it in, especially if it doesn't cause you any issues with your set bonuses. Next, we have our... I'll do one quick mention of the Swift Strike items. So these are both items created from leatherworking. They both are going to require materials from the new phase, the Hearts of Darkness. And the wrists are bind on equip, and the shoulders are bind on pickup. And they're taught by a pattern that is a drop from Black Temple. So keep that in mind. I believe the pattern only drops from Black Temple, but this says Frostworm as well. So actually, strike that. Looks like it's Black Temple and Hyjal. So probably similar to SSETK, that the patterns look like they're going to drop from both. And you have one BOE, one BOP piece, similar to how it used to work as well. So carrying on, we have some items that are small upgrades, and they're also still not best in slot. So these are items that, depending on your exact gear set, you could use. Unfortunately, all 3 of these occupy tier slots, so they're probably going to mess with your set bonuses. So in most cases, you're not going to use these, but technically, you could use these for short-term temporary upgrades if you're breaking some of your set bonuses. Next, we have items that are even with last phase. Now, these are items that are going to be good if you're missing the item from last phase, but otherwise might be something you want to pass over. So something like the choker and the boots are items that are about as good as items from phase 1, being about equal with Edgewalkers, although having more stamina, and the neck being about equal with the badge neck. So in theory, you should have both of those items by now. And if you don't, there you go. Little upgrade, but yeah. Especially when it comes to the sword in the ring, if you do have the previous phase's alternative, it's best to let someone else have these. The sword is best for Hunter, and the ring can be really good for really anyone that doesn't have a tier 5 ring. A lot of the physical DPS and enhance, a Hunter that needs the hit, even something like a... Warrior's got some new rings, actually, so maybe not necessarily a warrior, but some tanks can use this in a threat set as well. But all that's to say that if you have the tier 5 rings, you don't need this. But a lot of you rogues are not going to have Band of the Ranger General and Lethality. And if you're missing one of those rings, you could hold off and aim for the Illidan ring. But if you're between the Illidan ring and the 2 tier 5 rings, right? If you are only going to have one of those 3, Deceitful Intent is going to be a nice upgrade for you. But yeah, right at the level of the tier 5 rings, not something I would really worry too much about unless you're looking to really min-max the minute details of your character late in the phase. It's a slight upgrade. It gives you a little more stamina as well over some of the tier 5 rings. But yeah, I personally, with tier 5 rings, would pass this item and focus on other items that are more important. When it comes to the sword, this is going to increase, it's kind of the same thing as Talon of Ashara when it comes to damage output, when it comes to actually how much you're going to be doing when you use the weapon. So definitely something I would let other classes have if you have Talon of Ashara. If you don't, something you can definitely try and get as well. Downgrade tiers. So these are items that are worse than items from the previous phase. Now, the important thing to note here is that some of these downgrades are actually like really good, really the first 2, right? If you are missing some of the trinkets from the previous phase, being Dragonstein Trophy and Warp Spring Coil, these can be really nice items, whereas the rest of the gear kind of is not as good. Even the belts are worse than the hit belt that is BOE from SSC TK. So you're, unlikely to use a lot of these items. When it comes to the thrown weapon for Rogue, you ideally would like to have the gun from Alar, but not everyone's going to have the gun from Alar. If you don't have the gun from Alar, it's still not something that is insane. You definitely could use it, but it's going to be just slightly better than like a Prince Bow and kind of on the level of, the Honor Hold or Thralmar Exalted weapon, but it does free you up from having as much hit. So something you could use if you don't have the pistol, but definitely not something that I would even consider important, even if you don't have the pistol. It may be a very slight upgrade if you don't have the pistol. All right, next we have, let's just talk a little bit more about the trinkets before we move on. So we have Madness of the Betrayer. Now this is an incredibly powerful trinket, and it's really strong, but rogues have 2 really strong trinkets that they can be using already in Dragonspine Trophy and Warp Spring Coil. If you have both, I would not go for the Madness of the Betrayer. The spreadsheets, specifically the Simon spreadsheet, shows Madness being worse than these 2 items. However, there has been some discussion that because there is no internal cooldown on Madness of the Betrayer, it might be even better than we think. Even so, there's a very decent chance that these are going to be just better. And even if Madness of Betrayer was technically best in slot, it would still be much better for every other class besides Rogue, pretty much, because, specifically Hunter and Warrior, because we have 2 really powerful trinkets, one of which other classes can't even get. Now, Ashton Talisman of Lethality is the worst of these 4 trinkets, but it's not too far back, and is definitely something that is going to be very powerful if you're missing one of these trinkets. So I would be happy rocking DST Ash Tongue, Warp Spring Coil Ash Tongue before going for Madness. So that's pretty much all the items there. Lastly, I mentioned a few items that can be used in PvP. You've got an assortment of daggers. Not something that would be, particularly bad on paper in PvE either, but, obviously swords are definitely the preferred spec when it comes to rating. And why would you want to be a dagger rogue when you've got Glaives in the game? Also, forgot to put here, there's obviously the dagger from Illidan as well. So I'll edit the web thing too, so it'll be updated when you click the link in the description. But yeah, you've got these 3 daggers and also the dagger from Illidan as well. All things you can mess around with in PvP. And you've also got some offhands and some main hands, 2 slow main hands in the Claw and the Siphon, and some fast offhands in the Bludgeon and the Fist of Molten Fury. These are all items that would be great for PvP, keeping in mind that some of these items like the Claw or the Siphon are going to be items that are probably going to be prioritized to PvE first, though, as an item like Siphon is really good for enhancement. But you might end up getting them as leftovers once everyone's gotten them. So just keep that in mind. So that is it for rogues, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know which items you are going to be going for with your with your rogue, and you know, hopefully all of you guys have good fortune with Glaives. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more rogue content and more content for all classes coming up in Tier 6. Going to be releasing several loot-based videos for Tier 6 in the coming days and weeks. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you guys next time.